Welcome back again for another quick tip video. When I get a camera, the first thing I change. So I decided to refilm this whole video because I decided to make this the best kick-ass summary of back button focusing. Some people saying you should, some people saying you shouldn't. So we're gonna get to the bottom of this, effective immediately. Let's go right into it. Right into it in this very grungy place. Pretty cool, actually. The real truth is this: with any technique in photography, usually it's going to be good for most, but there's always that little exception, that one scenario where it just doesn't apply. That's why people would disagree. But the most important thing is to understand why to use AF on it or why not to, and make an educated decision based on that. So let's run through some scenarios of when to use it, when not to use it. But first, let's understand what is AF on focusing. I thought you would never ask. Right there, it says AF on. Just press that button. That's back button focusing. Big whoop, right? Hey, Danilo, what's the big deal? The reason why people use AF on is so you want to divide the focusing and the shutter clicking. You want to separate those two.
The shutter controls the exact moment you capture that picture. It's all about the timing. This is a perfect example where I couldn't get the shot without back button focusing.
You want to have full control of those two things separately. So that's the whole point of using an AF on button. Usually when you get your camera, if you half press, it'll try to focus. And when you full press, boom, shutter. So one of the reasons people use AF on is because when you press on the shutter button, it's designed for you to half press and shoot right away. It's not really designed for you to half press and kind of keep it there for like a couple seconds. It's really meant for like click and you're done. Every single time you half press, it tries to focus again. Even if something's already in focus, imagine the focus point is on me, beep beep, it'll still try to refocus. It's really inefficient. The camera's trying to focus when it shouldn't be, and it was really frustrating to me. For the type of work I do, so let's play the scenario. Usually at a wedding, what happens is that I get into the scene, first thing I do is right away, I just focus on the subject, even if it's not the right decisive moment. So I'm at least focused on that spot, and as soon as something happens, I just click, boom, I already got it. I prefer using the AF on. Normally, in general, if anybody's telling you that there's no other way to do something except for this one way, they're probably selling you something. Some YouTubers that actually made videos about this are sponsored by a company or another. So I like to keep things as objective as possible. Some graffiti, look at that. I've been using the AF on button for the last about 7 years. I'm actually gonna try one of the alternatives to AF on. I'm gonna try it, see what happens. It's good to keep an open mind, you know? The way I shoot works really well with a 5D Mark IV. With a slight little tap, you could change from servo mode to single shot mode, which is really critical.
Make sure to stay till the end where I'll explain everything about drive modes and my personal setup.
Get crisp, dependable focus reliably all the time, because I do weddings, events, and you got to be really fast on your feet. Faster you can get the shots, the better it is, so focusing is important. Let's just say it straight, some cameras are just not that well built for your thumb to go directly on the AF on button, and it's just not comfortable to hold. That's the truth. The EOS R right here has like a really weird position. You gotta like twist your hand and it's not comfortable. I'm not able to grip the camera really hard. So it's all about the position of where the EF on button is. Here it's right here. So it's actually pretty good. So when I put my hand, best case scenario, wherever I put my thumb, you want to be able to have a really good grip on the camera. You gotta get into the groove. Because sometimes having a better grip, when people shoot for long hours, so for wedding photography, I shoot for 8, 10, 12, 14 hours in one shot. The comfort of the camera is super important in that case, and it actually puts strain on the wrist. So the ergonomics are really important. If your hand is positioned weird, the finger could slip really easily on the EOS R. It puts extra strain on my wrist. I have to change the way I hold the EOS R. But the new Canon ESR5 is gonna have a proper EF on button. They basically just made a mirrorless version of the 5D Mark IV, what everybody wanted. Can't wait for the 5R to be released. Really stoked. This thing's a workout. So the alternative technique to using the AF on button like it's supposed to, you could change this button and program it to AF lock. We're just doing the inverse of AF on, focusing with your button. And if you want to stop it from focusing, you just press this and it'll just lock on your subject and it's not going to refocus all the time. So I'm going to try it out, see how it goes. It's called something else in Nikon and Canon, but it's the same thing. The main problem with using AF lock is that you're really dependent on the technology of the camera. If you have the latest, greatest camera, then it should be pretty good. But if you don't, then using the AF lock will probably not be the best solution for you, especially if you have any of the older cameras that are not released in the last like 3 or 4 years. I would stick with the classics.
Yes. Better? What do you think?
Sometimes it's actually useless to use the AF on. One of those scenarios is macro photography. For my travel style of macro photography, I just put in manual and just move the camera. Shooting handheld macro photography, the slightest movement of the camera is going to change your focus. Move back and forth, just like that. Boom. So I just click and that's it. It doesn't really matter if you're using AF on or not because my lens is on manual, so it doesn't really change anything. For really magnified macro work, a lot of it depends on how good your camera's focusing system is. Your autofocus system, if it's actually able to focus on a little insect, is better than trying to guess it. It'll focus instantly with that really good focusing technology. So it really depends on your camera's focusing system, but the reality is I don't trust it. Maybe in like 5, 10, 20 years, everything is just going to be automated. AI focusing. Focus could be on par every single time. And at that point, nobody's going to be using this AF on button at all because the technology is just going to be so much better than human interaction with the camera. But until that day, I'm going to stick to the classics and try different techniques. If you want to see some really good macro photography, check out Don Kamarechka. Check out his stuff right here. He does really creative stuff and he really pushes the boundaries of tech, bubbles and all kind of really cool stuff. Check him out. On the point of camera technologies, a lot of it you're depending on the technology of the camera and you're also depending on the form factor of your camera. So some cameras are just not made for holding it for a long time. They're made for casual use. That's cool. If it doesn't matter and you're just shooting for fun, then it's a totally different situation than if you're doing this for professionally and shooting the president and you got to get the shot in 15 seconds. There's a difference here, but there's a big but. If you're a pro photographer and you really want super good results every single time, honestly, if the camera's not good enough, I'm gonna change my camera. All right, we're back in the studio because it got really cold. So I'm just gonna finish up right here in the studio in my office. I'm just gonna pick the best camera that suits my needs, and Ergonomics is included. Let's get practical, let's get some cameras. Got the 5D Mark IV right here. Hello. This brings me to another exception here. So this camera has really good IF. So with a camera like the A7R III or the new A7 III, once you press the IF button, so on this camera, I set it to middle button right here. It's gonna look for an eye, so we need a face. Let's Google face. So we're gonna shoot this man that I shot in Guatemala and this model. It'll focus on the closest eye to me. So it focuses really well on the eye and then you just click whenever you feel like you got a good moment. So it's really simple for focusing with IF because the technology is really good. But not everybody has IF, which leads me to the next point. So a lot of people get confused about drive modes. So drive modes are one thing. That's how your camera focuses, and AF on has to do with when you focus. When I press that button, it focuses. In general, there's usually 3 drive modes for most cameras. That's every single brand has their own names for this. On Sony, we got single, there's automatic, and then there's continuous. Canon has 1 focus, AI focus, and servo. Single is what is set as default. That's when you just want to take 1 picture at a time. Usually good for subjects that don't really move. But for moving subjects, that's why we have continuous mode and automatic mode. Continuous mode is what it says, is basically always continuously focusing on the subject. And automatic is kind of like a blend of the two. Some sort of witchery. The main thing not to do is to use single mode on moving subjects. So let's say somebody's moving towards you and you're running. It's not the best idea to just keep on focusing every second, because when you focus, there's a split second, you're like missing the focus slightly just with that movement. Whereas with continuous, it'll always track your subject live and it's gonna be the best results. If you don't have continuous focusing on your camera, then you can just keep on hitting autofocus and just hope that the camera gets everything in focus. This is why I love my 5D Mark IV. It's so great because of this. As default, I'm set to single mode, but if I have moving subjects, all I have to do is press this little button right here, and that changes the drive mode to servo. I let it goes back to single, I press it, back to servo. Single, servo, single, servo. So that really works for me because it's set on single mode, click around, and when people are running, walking, then I just press this and shoot away. To summarize, depends what kind of camera you have and the ergonomics of the camera, as well as what do you shoot, how you like to shoot it, your style. With time, these things get more clear. For most people, using the AF on button is the best choice, but there's exceptions. For the casual photographer, just shooting around for fun and really wants a small body like an Olympus or the Panasonic, then it doesn't really matter. It's good to know about AF, try it out, see how it works in your hand, and then decide from there, depending on the ergonomics of your camera. For advanced macro photography, AF on is not that relevant. If you have the latest, greatest camera, then you could try all the different ways of doing it, meaning AF lock, AF on, the IF on the sim. That summarizes everything for you. In the end, just pick whatever works for you. I hope that was helpful. So I'm gonna keep banging out these videos. I would invite you to hit that like button because it helps with YouTube. All right, I'll see you in the next video. Peace.